From Homedale to Salmon River, District 3 has several teams that don't always get their due. Stepping outside the shadows of the SIC, this is the Treasure Valley Prepcast with Logan Green.
That's right. It's another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, where we're talking about all that 3A, 2A, 1A stuff going on in District 3. The Treasure Valley Prepcast is brought to you by D.L. Evans Bank. This is community banking, and this is Brandon Baney with Logan Green. Logan, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Just another great week of high school sports last week and getting ready for another great one this week as well.
Yeah, now we, of course, offer a lot of different ways for you to consume the Treasure Valley Prepcast each week. Everybody has their preference. There's audio only at our website, IdahoSports.com, as well as wherever you download your podcasts, Apple, Google. On my phone, it's called Podcast Addict because I'm, old school and I have an Android still. I haven't switched over to the dark side. You can also catch the video of the Treasure Valley Prepcast each week on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. And if you're watching the video, I always try to incorporate one video-specific element. Logan, go ahead and show off that shirt you're rocking.
Oh, yeah, here we go. My old school NC State shirt, fresh off the win against Clemson. It's a good week to be a Pack fan right now. Finally. I can't say that many times in my life, but it's a good week right now. I mean, they'll find a way to blow this great opportunity they've been given, and they will. Like the baseball team getting sent home, for sure going to win the College World Series, and then they get sent home. It's, it'll crash and burn, but we're going to ride the top right now and enjoy it. We're going to,
If you had told me coming into the season that the teams with the most buzz in the ACC right now would be NC State, Georgia Tech, Boston College,
Wake Forest.
Yeah. So congratulations to your Wolfpack.
Yeah. Well, I know nobody wants to listen to ACC football, but it's like the team that worries me the most is Wake Forest. Man, I don't know what it is, but when NC State has to play at Wake, I talk about a boring environment that half the time the other stadium. I've been there when Wake Forest has had to call a timeout because they couldn't hear when they were on offense. Like, it's the other fans fill their stadium more there in Winston-Salem. But I don't know what it is. They just get NC State almost every time when they play over there. So, and I think the game is at Wake this year. So that makes me worried. So, I mean, they got the, quote, hard part out of the way with Clemson. So it's all downhill theoretically from there. But that they still got Boston College, Louisville, and Wake Forest. So we'll see. I know ACC definitely not America's premier football conference, but hey, you beat Clemson, you'll enjoy it. We're in the top 25. Panthers are 3-0. My life is really, really good in the sports world right now. I'm not going to complain.
For sure. Congratulations to your NC State Wolfpack team success, but along the way you have torpedoed the entire ACC's chances of participating in the college football playoff. So
they're all shaking their heads right now. Hey, the Wake Forest might sneak their way, but no, we destroyed it.
Yeah. All right. So you ready for this transition? Because obviously this is not a college football or ACC podcast.
We could do one of those, Brandon. We could do one.
We could.
Just me and you. Just an offshoot college football one.
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody would listen to it, but it would be fun.
Yeah, I don't know how many people living in Idaho would really be into what's going on in the ACC. But
yeah, let's talk about it, guys. Anyways.
Of course, the big news in college football recently has been conference realignment. And as I transition into high school sports, realignment on the way, because today the IHSAA had their September meeting in Haley, actually, at Wood River High School. And today was the big day we were all waiting for. All the schools that were petitioning either to move up a level or stay down a classification level, all those cases were heard today. And for the most part, kind of a mixed bag. Some schools were granted an exemption and some weren't. But as it pertains to the Treasure Valley, normally we talk about those 3A, 2A, 1A schools, but I think just for this one time, let's talk about some of the 5A, 4A stuff that's impacting the Treasure Valley.
Yeah, I mean, you saw, I mean, most of the 4A SIC was involved in this, right? So Caldwell petitioned down and it was approved. And I don't think anybody has a problem with that. Same thing with Ridgeview. They petitioned to stay down. And then, of course, Skyview is moving down just because the numbers are lower. But then Nampa petitioned and they were denied. And then, of course, Middleton, I was surprised to see them. I didn't think Andy Ankney was going to do that, but I thought he made a great point. I was listening to it. So I was working and watching that on my iPad beside each other. You know, it was a good time, good way to burn your morning work hours, right? But he made a good point, and it's just an interesting transition. And I do not know what this answer is. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So if anybody else out there has solutions, I'd love to hear them. But he said, if you look at the 4A SIC, almost the entire conference is move downs, right? Caldwell moved down. Ridgeview moved down. In the past, Nampa had moved down. And it was Emmett and Bishop Kelly that were the true 4A teams sitting there in 4A. And both of those two teams are barely 4A. They're friends. Their numbers are close almost in the 3A level. So there's a big gap. And Andy kind of, forgive me, I do a lot of Middleton games and know Andy pretty well. So if I'm not saying his words exactly as I remember hearing them, but he's kind of just like, well, why not us? Why? I mean, everybody else is doing it. And then somebody else made the comment there too of what is this process of, there's really no hard line that says you get to go, you don't. It's all up to the board. And I thought he had a good point at first. I kind of thought he had Middleton, of course, won a state basketball championship last year. Football team's always in state. Girls basketball is always at state. Girls soccer is always at state. Tennis and golf do well too. So they don't have any problems with that and had nothing to go with there. But his point was kind of, well, why not? Everybody else. And Middleton's growing. They're going to be well into 5A numbers soon enough, and it won't matter. But his point of, well, everybody else is going down, so why don't I just stay? We make a good conference. We make a great conference. And obviously that failed. But like I said, I think his point was valid in where is the line, Brandon? Like, we saw Vision Charter. That's the one in our group, right? In our 1A, 2A, 3A. They're supposed to be at a 2A level. They got to play down at 1A Division 1. That was approved again. It had been like that. But yeah, it's just like, where is the line? Where is, it's kind of up in the air. It's just an arbitrary decision to say who gets to go, who has to stay. And it's just an interesting, I don't think that there was a bad decision made. I'll say that. I think every decision was correct. I thought Middleton should have moved up. Nampa probably should be moving up. And those other schools, definitely Caldwell should be down, and so should Ridgeview. But you look around, it's just – I think some people would have that. It's like, well, where is the line? What went into the decision? And like I said, ultimately, I think it was the right decision, but, you can see that being a question mark head scratcher for some people.
Yeah. Well, Logan, you've lived in Idaho a lot longer than I have, but I'll tell you, in the 3+ years that I've lived here, from what I've seen, to me, it's pretty simple. If you're a successful team and you're winning a lot, you're going to get kicked up. You're not going to win your appeal. If you are an athletics program that is struggling to get wins and then in turn get players to come out because people want to play for winners, generally speaking, then you get to stay down. And to me, is it fair? No, it's not. Is it the best system they can come up with given the parameters of what they have to work with? Yes. But to me, it's pretty simple. Middleton, they've been winning a lot. They're up. Ridgeview has not been winning a lot. They get to stay down, right? In other parts of the state.
Yeah.
Idaho Falls got kicked up to 5A 2 years ago. They had just won the boys basketball title at 4A. Shelley had been running roughshod over everybody in 3A. They get moved up to 4A. Cuna came off of the state 4A football title and were pretty good at wrestling. They got bumped up to 5A. So to me, it is arbitrary, and to me, it boils down to, are your teams good? Then
what have you done for me lately? Kind of attitude. Yeah.
Even Emmett, right? Emmett petitioned to stay in 3A, and they got kicked up because they were going on to deep playoff runs. And they're one of the teams that has been able to turn it around and figure it out, but it took a couple of years, and that's what it's going to take for almost all these teams. It's going to take them a couple of years to kind of figure it out. And by then, who knows? Maybe they're that's the other thing too, is there's these teams that are constantly yo-yoing back and forth. I think of Skyview, I think of Skyline over in Idaho Falls.
Because isn't Idaho Falls moving back down to 4A? Like I thought maybe I'm misreading that. I thought I saw their move, but yeah, there's these teams going back and forth, and you think it's hard to like maintain, those true rivalries, right? Because I know Middleton and Bishop Kelly, those two schools get up to play each other every year, and now that's not a conference game anymore. It doesn't mean as much. It's still going to be important, but you've got to admit that non-conference games they don't, as the kids say, it hits different, right? Than a non-conference game. And that's what one thing that Andy said. A quote that Mike LaGlama had in the Statesman tonight. He just said, that they're excited for what's coming, the new rivalries that are going to be put in place. And so I thought that was a great quote, that he's looking forward. And I think that's what you got to do. Once the decision's made, you just got to go forward with it. And looking around, there was a lot of movement in the 1A level. A lot of teams moved from 1A D1 down to 1A D2. And I think it's good for those programs, especially where there's not a lot of kids. And it's tough to want to get kids to come in and get, beat like that. Especially when there's only 12 or 15 kids that can go out for it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a better deal for a team. Like I believe Clark Fork moved down, Wallace moved down, Lewis County, the co-op with and Kylan and Nez Perce, they moved down. I think it's good for them. I think it's good for those teams, even for Caldwell. Like if they can just get, some stability, get kids and wanting to play. And I think that's where the successful programs, they've been good for so long. Like you look at, let's just take Gooding. I'm gonna use Gooding because I think Gooding is a good school system, a well-run program by Coach Anderson. But you look, and I mentioned this here before, the kids around the field in Gooding, they've got their middle school jerseys on, they've got their Pee-wee jerseys on that say Senators, and they want to do that. They want to play. That's what they want. And they see the good, they see success, and so they want to be successful. And those schools, they maybe playing down can help them get to that point and bring the younger generation up and make them want to be successful. And then in return, you're able to build a bigger program and move back up to where you should be. I'm just spitting out loud here, Brandon, but the more programs we have that are successful, the better the state of Idaho is in football, period. So, yeah,
we have a good think tank going here, Logan. I add a couple of points, and then we can move on to actual results and things like that. With Middleton moving up to 5A, I think they have a chance for a real home field advantage because everyone's going to have to leave the metro area to travel out there, right? So
that's right.
Not a short jaunt, but so that's going to be big. To the point I was stating earlier about those teams that always seem to be hopping on the elevator, right? They're either moving up or and then two years later they're back down. I've said this for a while now. Why don't we move the goalposts? Why don't we sit down and redo the enrollment numbers and change the parameters? If there's so many teams that are straddling that line, let's tweak the enrollment figures that are required for each level, and I think you'll have less volatility because of that.
Yeah, I mean, because going back to what we said, is there a 4A? There's not a true 4A team in the Treasure Valley. It seems like they're all 5A teams. That there's not a 4A. They're all petitioning down, except Emmett and Bishop Kelly, and now Skyview. Those are the three. Everybody else in the SIC is petitioned down. We're getting kicked up. So, yeah, it's you're right. Let's move those goalposts. In this, not in other things, but in life.
Yes.
But here, yeah. Why don't we adjust those? And like I said, I don't have the answers. I don't know where you move the goalposts to, but maybe it's just something to think about. I think that point was made during the meeting. I wish I could remember who it was that stated that. But he said that just a little bit of general confusion and wondering where does it end and where does it start. And I guess it'll be the question on everybody's mind until the next time we get back to the petitions.
Yes. And then I did want to also mention kind of the other big piece of news that came about because of this is people or schools can now petition for football only, right? We saw with like Wood River, for example, they are a 4A school in every sport now except football. They petition down and will compete in 3A for football. Last week on the North Idaho Prepcast, I was talking to Stetson Spooner, the head coach of Mullen St. Regis and that co-op. And this is how it'll tie into what we're talking about here with these 1A programs in the Treasure Valley. I asked him, I said, he's from Montana, I'm from Montana. And in Montana, co-ops are very common. like schools are getting hitched all the time. There's a co-op this year in Montana, Logan. It's 5 schools playing.
I know. I listened. That was a great episode. Yeah. That one with you and Stetson. If you guys didn't listen to that was, you just don't hear about. That's a great run program and worth a listen to, that episode.
Yeah, and you can find it on our site, IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, there's a Prepcasts menu, and it drops down, and it's got all of our Prepcasts on there. You just click on the North Idaho Prepcast, and yeah, you can hear that conversation. So we talked about, Mullen is one of the few co-ops in the state of Idaho, and I said, why are teams so resistant to that? You've got, for example, Salmon River, a team that is like barely getting by with numbers, right? Or a Meadows Valley, which for years didn't have a football team, right? And I said, how come those smaller communities aren't co-oping together to say, it's better to have a season than not? And he said, I think now that there are football only petitions that can be put in place, Stetson, Coach Spooner, said that maybe we'll start to see more of those co-ops where 2 schools can get together and not have to worry about the enrollment numbers as much, knowing that they can petition for a football-only arrangement. So I think it will be interesting to see, especially in the Treasure Valley, because there are, for example, Cascade this year tried to have their own program, ultimately didn't have enough, and all those players are just part of McCall-Donnelly. It's not the McCall-Donnelly dash Cascade, right? Yeah. It's just McCall-Donnelly. So you lose that identity. But with a co-op, it's both schools are on the uniform. Both schools are out front. So I don't know. What do you think? Are we going? Do you think? Coach is onto something there? I
mean, you can't deny it. Like, especially let's just take that Meadows Valley, Salmon River issue, right? So let's say you combine the numbers, and maybe they're a fringe 2A or a high 1A D1 school, but definitely looking at it this year, those 2 are not one. They should not be playing at 1A D1. And I don't think anybody would see past that and say, yeah, they should be, those 2 schools, you combine them, they're bigger than Council. They're bigger, they're bigger than Council and Garden Valley put together. They should be 1A D1. I don't think anybody would have that attitude. And I think that you saw that in the meeting. Somebody was sticking up for, somebody was going around, they were talking about open gym, and somebody was making a comment about Richfield, and then the Richfield AD stood up and he's like, thanks for sticking up for Richfield. I don't think anybody's vindictive out there and is going to punish other kids for their own agenda. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think you saw that with the votes. I think they were very in line with what they should have been. And I think all the petitions that should have happened were approved, and that should have been denied were denied. And I think everything lined up. I think that will continue. So I agree with it. I think that you probably will see that. Like if Salmon River and Meadows Valley could combine, I don't know, what do you call that? The Salmon Meadows or
and I mean
Meadows River? What would you?
I just used that as an example. I mean, those 2 schools don't have to co-op together necessarily. They can.
No, yeah, and I just thought that's what came to mind. I was just spitting out. I was making something up, and they're close enough, right? So we could use them as an example. But I mean, even like, let's say Wallace and Mullen, right, get small enough, or like Greenleaf if they need to combine with Wilder, which they, if their numbers dip, and you combine them together, those two are probably going to be at a 2A level, if not higher, but they should definitely be playing at 1A D1 level. So that there's another example of just spitting out hypotheticals out there that could occur. So I agree. I think that you'll probably see that. And I think it'll be good. I think it'll make for deeper teams where people aren't forced to play a position that maybe doesn't suit them, and that they can play where they want to play, and don't have to play every snap and get worn out. And I think it'll be good overall. I think it'll be interesting over the next couple of years to see how it ends up shaking out for that.
Yeah, I mean, we could be totally wrong as well. So
yeah, you're right. It could, which probably will be. I'm never right, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, speaking of totally wrong, we were totally wrong on the Western Idaho Conference and 2A football. And go ahead.
Yeah, and I will eat all the crow all day long. I'm not. It doesn't bother me. And here we got. I'm going to pull this up.
Well, before you dive in too deep, Logan,
yes.
let's take a break. Let's get out our eat my hat. Let's get out our fork and knife and get ready, because we got some crow to eat. So we have some apologies to make. Let's take a break real quick though. You're listening/watching the Treasure Valley Prepcast, sponsored by DL Evans Bank. This is Community Banking, and we will be right back to talk about the 2A WIC and lots of other good stuff right after this on the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
Wherever you are, DL Evans Bank is right there to help. From applying for loans to opening new accounts and signing documents, personalized service is just a video call away. This is Bank Live with DL Evans Bank. This is Community Banking.
All right, we're back on the Treasure Valley Prepcast. Brandon Baney, Logan Green. Here I am, metaphoric hat in hand. I don't have an actual hat anywhere near.
Yeah.
We got it wrong. Well, I got it wrong in the preseason.
I got it wrong.
Well, I mean, you still have a chance. So when we were talking about
that's true.
2A WIC football this year, we both said, well, Melba was picked the favorite in the preseason coaches poll. And you and I were like, we don't really agree with that. We're smarter than the coaches. You said you liked Nampa Christian. I said I liked Coal Valley Christian. Well, Nampa Christian hasn't played Melba yet. So you're not.
I'm still holding out hope here that maybe I was right.
Yeah, but I will say Melba really impressed me in a 44-21 win over Coal Valley Christian. I thought Coal Valley was ready to take that next step.
Yeah.
And they're good. Coal Valley's a good team still, but not quite at the level that Melba is.
Yeah, I think Melba has just showed everybody that, they might have had some early season losses, but they are still who they have been here in the WIC, right? That they are the team to beat. And until somebody beats them, we can't knock them off. And so maybe that was our fault for jumping the gun there. But, Nampa Christian's still lurking around, but, a common opponent is Fruitland. And, man, that Nampa Christian got beat pretty heavily by Fruitland. And that Melba game with Fruitland was very tight. So if you're into that kind of thing, there's a comparison there. But, I think Melba has proved me wrong, proved you wrong, probably proved a lot of people wrong out there, just saying that we're back. And here's the thing that I like. We got an email from Corey Dickard. So, Corey, we appreciate your email. He called us out, and he's right. And listen, if we're wrong on something, please, send it to me. I want to hear it. It'd be great. My Twitter is at Idaho Sports LPG. You can find me there. You can email me. It's Logan@IdahoSports.com. Send me how I'm wrong and tell me what you want me to say, because we like this. This is a great email from Corey, right? He, I had hit on that. I like that offensive line from Nampa Christian. And he came out and said that Melba offensive line has not been getting credit, and I agree with him. And we're going to go ahead and give them that credit that they deserve. I think they have showed up. And like you said, that big win over Coal Valley, just I think that put me back in my seat a little bit, saying, wow, they really took it. not just that they beat them, but that the way they beat them in that game really kind of set them apart and says, hey, maybe the Mustangs are back. And maybe it's not just in the conference, but maybe it's a whole 2A thing now that people have to worry about Melba. But Melba, we'll just take a look at their offensive line here. Some of the stats for their players. Corey mentions the tight end Will Vale. He's a senior 3-year starter. On the line there, one of the right tackles, Troy Theobald, senior starting for 2 years. Sean Canoy is a senior and a 2-year starter. Corey Dickard, the center, is a junior and a 3-year starter. And then you've got David Kossel is a senior and a 3-year starter. And then the left tackle, Ben Evans, is a senior. And it says he's a first-year offensive line starter, but he makes the move from fullback. He's a big boy. So you just looking at those, what do they call them? The hogs on the line.
Right.
They've been pushing people around, and it looks like they're going to continue to push around everybody in the 2A WIC. And I was wrong, and I'll admit it. And I'm right here to admit it that Melba looks good. They're great. And I want more of this. I want more emails from people like Corey out there. Please send it our way.
Yep, I totally agree. Brandon at IdahoSports.com or on Twitter at Brandon_Baney, Baney. Melba, we did those top 10 positional previews in the off season, right, leading up to the start of the season. Cody Dickard made our top 10 offensive lineman. He was the only underclassman to make the top 10 list. I'm pretty sure. It's been a while, so I don't remember exactly, but because I think he was the best center in the state, and that's why I included him in there. Will Vale at tight end just missed the cut on our top 10 receivers and tight ends. That was kind of a combo list, and he just missed the cut. So coming in, like, there were some guys that I knew were going to be good for Melba, and it's not that we were wrong to say that Nampa Christian is good or Coal Valley Christian is good, because they both are, but we have been kind of neglecting Melba a little bit.
Yes, and that's what I meant. Not to say that those two teams are great, and I think they'll probably be playoff teams in Coal Valley and Nampa Christian, but I just didn't give them enough credit. I thought that those two teams were going to make the jump, and I kind of, like you said, I kind of just pushed them to the side, and they said, no, Brandon, no, Logan, we're still here. We won this thing last year, and until somebody beats us, it's still ours. And it's still theirs, looking like right now they're playing great, I believe. And they lost to North Fremont, and that there's no shame in that. North Fremont, just a phenomenal 2A program. And then they lost to Fruitland, a 3A school on the road. So, I mean, you can't really – those aren't bad losses. And it's only going to help come playoff time when that playoff seeding comes around.
Right. So, and just to wrap up the 2A WIC talk, Nampa Christian – had a non-conference game last week, 76-0 shutout over Valley. The week before, they got their first conference win over Marsing, 43-0. So in the past two games, they've outscored their opponents. What is that? 109-0. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they're rolling. I think Melba beat Valley 74-0 the week before that too. So a little rough week for the Vikings from Hazleton, but anyways, that's the Magic Valley's business.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see, how those two teams play later between Nampa Christian and Melba, and see if that's close, see how it goes. I still think it could be a toss-up game. I think those lines are going to be pushing each other around. And we'll see how that one shakes up. That should be that one's later on in the season. I think it's in 2 or 3 more weeks before those two teams match up.
Yeah, it looks like the only conference game in the 2A WIC this week is Nampa Christian at New Plymouth. So, and New Plymouth just lost to Vale 12-6. Pretty tough loss, but I didn't see anybody else that's playing.
I think hold on, I got my schedule.
I don't see anybody else. So
yeah, so it's a quiet. I guess everybody has a bye week this week.
Yeah, well, it's much deserved this time of the year for sure. So, one league that is not going to be quiet this week is the SRV, the 3A Snake River Valley Conference. Homedale 5-0, Weiser 5-0. Those two sure seem to be on a collision course. We thought Fruitland, Fruitland maybe had a little juice, pardon the pun, but man, Weiser put that to bed pretty quickly last week. A 40-18 win over Fruitland to go to 1-0 in the league. Fruitland now 2-2. So I think it's clear the gap between Homedale and Weiser and the next group pretty large.
Yeah, and Fruitland hung around for a little bit. I think they were in it. I think they might have even had the lead around halftime. As I was following scores, I'm doing a game, but also I like to know what's going on, right? I like to follow the Friday Night Flash on IdahoSports.com and see what's going. That's just the easiest place, right? It's the easiest place to get all the scores from around the state, because I could scroll Twitter or other social media sites, but I am making a plug right here. It's shameless, but I mean, it really is great, right? All the scores across the state on one page. You just change your tab for what level you want, and the scores are there. You don't have to ask cousin Betty from Shelley to send you the score. You can just go to the website, right? And so I enjoy looking at that. And so I was following that score as it got updated on the flash, and so it was a little tight early, and then of course Weiser pulled away. And like you said, I think there's the gap right there. I think that gap is between it's Weiser and it's Homedale, and then it's Fruitland, and then it's everybody else. I think that's kind of how it looks to be shaking out this year.
Yeah, Homedale had a 49-7 win over McCall Donnelly, a team that maybe had some sleeper buzz coming into the season, and then the big matchup we talked about, Payette at Parma. I thought this was a great opportunity for Parma to get that first win, and man, they came up just short, 21-18.
Yeah, almost able to pick it up, and looking at Payette, 3 wins. So for a team that didn't win a game, or they had their season canceled, was it 2 or 3 years ago, that they didn't have the numbers, and now all of a sudden they got 3 wins here in the 3A. I believe it was 3 years ago that they just didn't even have the numbers, and they had to close up shop.
Well, in Logan, they're a play or two away from being 4-1 instead of 3-2. They lost to New Plymouth by 8, 24-16. I mean, that was a very winnable game for them as well. So it's nice.
Yeah, so maybe they're up and coming. I know that they've traditionally struggled, but hey, I mean, maybe they're turning the corner there in Payette, and maybe all the kids from Fruitland moved up the road a little too far and have to play for Payette now. But no, I think, like you said, I think it's just a crash course. We're waiting for that Weiser Homedale game. It's just I think that'll be and what's interesting is last year Homedale was undefeated, and so was Fruitland going into that matchup. It was the last game of the regular season, and then Homedale just was all over Fruitland in that game, and then Fruitland ended up losing in the playoffs to Weiser. So we'll see how that ends up shaking out at the end. I think this is a little different. I think last year people could see that coming. That's kind of how I thought it was going to shake out. But this year, I think those two teams are 2 of the top 3 teams in the state in 3A right now.
Yep. And speaking of 3A football, as we look at the schedule this week, I was peeking at the bracket, the 3A state bracket.
Yeah.
And the representation. And in 3A, there's no at-large bids, right? It's all predetermined. The 5 conference champs get buys. The other teams all kind of have play-in games, and then they reseed them 1 through 8 as they advance through. So I'm pretty sure I got that right, Logan?
I think so. I was looking at it too. I believe that's because that's how it was last year. It's like everybody played, and then they reshuffled everything and threw them back in.
Yeah. So they basically have the 6 at-large teams, or the 6 non-conference champions play in games, and then from there it's quarterfinals. So District 3 gets 3 teams.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way to line it up, because let's just hypotheticals. Let's say Homedale beats Weiser, and that's Weiser's only loss of the year. I don't think it's, number one, fair for a team to host Weiser to win their or whatever it is, and they get a home playoff game, and then Weiser shows up and beats them by 40, in the first round. Like, that's probably not fair. So what's going to happen is now if Weiser loses to Homedale, they're probably going to get a home play-in game, right?
Yes.
And then if they win that, they'll go on and it'll get reshuffled, and they'll probably still be a top 3 team and have a home game. And that's probably how it should be, rather than sending them on the road to Kellogg or something. But Kellogg actually – so if you look at the standings in 4A, right, in the poll that came out today, it was Homedale was 1. I think Gooding was 2. Weiser was 3, and then Kellogg was 4. And then there was a huge drop in votes. I think Sugar Salem was 5, but they only had 5 votes, and Kellogg had 20 votes or something like. I mean, it's a huge drop off. I think those 4 teams have started to separate themselves from everybody else. It's kind of just a jumbled mess, and so those 4 teams deserve home games for sure. And so it would be a shame to see one in this conference specifically, somebody have to go on the road that opening week after virtually going undefeated except losing to the number 1 team in the state. So I think it works out well for 3A.
Yep. And just before we get more emails, Weiser was 2 in the poll. I don't want to shortchange Weiser.
Okay, Weiser was 2. Sorry, I'm.
Yep.
I look at a lot of stuff every day and I can't remember. So yes.
Yeah, it's all good.
Gooding was 3 and Kellogg 4. All right. So, I apologize, everybody. Sorry.
No worries.
1 and 2 right here in the same, off the same Highway 95. So, they both deserve home games. So hopefully, it sounds like that's probably how it'll end up shaking out.
Yes. So this week, Parma is at Homedale. Probably a win for Homedale. Weiser is at Payette. Probably a win for Weiser. Here's the interesting game. McCall Donnelly at Fruitland. The winner of that game probably gets that 3rd and final playoff spot.
Yeah, so that is a huge game for those 2 teams. I don't think a lot of people look at it that way, but like you said, that's most likely a conference that's going to decide a conference spot, because those 2 teams probably went out. The rest, they're going to beat Payette, they're going to beat Parma, I would assume, and then lose to Weiser and Homedale. So they got to beat that team. That's who they got to beat to sneak in the playoffs. So big game for those 2 teams. I do think if I had to throw my hat in anybody's ring, I'm going to throw it Fruitland's way this weekend.
Okay. I picked Fruitland last week over Weiser in the Gridiron game picks, which you can also compete in on the homepage at IdahoSports.com, where you pick the winner of every single game across the state. You compete against the experts like me, experts in quotes like me and Logan, and it's a lot of fun. So don't forget to do that before 7 p.m. Mountain Time on Friday as well. Get those picks locked in. You could win some cold hard cash if you're our weekly winner, and it's free to play. So nothing more like free money, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's going to be a big matchup, and I guess I would have to lean with you and maybe give the slight nod to Fruitland. Although McCall Donnelly, it wouldn't shock me if they came out. But we'll go with Fruitland there. But
and looking around as well in 1A, it's also a quiet night in 1A on Friday. Only a couple games in District 3. Like, you got Tri-Valley playing Garden Valley. You got Salmon River and Horseshoe Bend. Meadows Valley is going to play the JV team from Lewis County. Those are the 1A D2 games. And then 1A D1, Notice and Idaho City, and then Wilder and Greenleaf. And that's it. It's bye week this week for most of the teams here in Southwest Idaho.
For sure. The 1A results last week, I think that we were keeping an eye on. Horseshoe Bend went over to Water Springs in that late addition to the schedule and won 50-30, further cementing, I think, that Horseshoe Bend's a pretty solid team this year. Council continues to look really good. We talked about Tri-Valley playing Council, and the winner of that game had a really good chance to grab a playoff spot. So Council with the 56-12 win there. Idaho City gets their first win, 42-20 over Greenleaf Friends. The game that Garden Valley, of course, over Salmon, just a shorthanded Salmon River team at this point.
Yeah.
And then the big game we were, Will Henneke and I talked about on the 8-man Prepcast was Rimrock at Wilder. And we thought that was going to be kind of a de facto playoff game. And the winner of that game probably had the inside track at second place in the conference, and Wilder wins a low-scoring 112-6.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a 8-man game be that low-scoring. Just very, very low-scoring game. But, and that's kind of how, I went over to Wilder a couple weeks ago, saw them, and I really thought that Wilder had that second spot in hand. And I think that game proves it. So that they'll get to dance with notice. I think they play the last week of the season to see who's going to win that conference. And, it's still looking like it'll be notice. But Wilder, I think their defense is really good. I mean, they had to play really their one blip on the radar is that carry game. And everybody gets that from carry. It's not uncommon. It's just the nature of that beast. Those guys, they beat a 4A school last year. Anyway, so we'll just ignore that one. But outside of that, defense is playing very well for Wilder. And, at the end of the day, sometimes that defense can make the difference when you get late in the season and playoff time rolls around.
Yeah. So we're as we cross over into October this weekend, now the games really start to take on a lot more importance. It's going to be a lot of fun to break down all of the big football games that happened over the course of the week on next week's edition. Before we wrap it up, I did want to mention real quick in volleyball, Logan, we kind of had talked about how there was that three-headed monster at the 1A D2 ranks. With Tri-Valley and Horseshoe Bend and Council. Well, Tri-Valley last week played both Horseshoe Bend and Council and fell and actually got swept in both matches 3-0. So Tri-Valley, I know, was a team we were pretty excited about coming in, and they're not out of it by any stretch, but Horseshoe Bend continues to just impress. They're still undefeated, and Council with Coach Paula Tucker orchestrating a turnaround there. It's gonna be a fascinating district tournament to watch.
And those two play tomorrow. If you're listening to it on Wednesday tonight, so it'll be on September 29th, those two team play. And I'm going to get to I know we're wrapping up here, but the 3 stars, I'm going to go ahead and give out one right now because we're here. But one of my 3 stars was to the Council volleyball team. Council volleyball team the last week, they beat Meadows Valley 3-0, Garden Valley 3-1, Tri-Valley 3-0, and then Ambrose 3-0. So they win 4 games and only lose 1 set in those 4 games.
That's pretty impressive.
And they beat Tri-Valley handily 3-0. Watch out now. I don't think I think we liked Tri-Valley, and all of a sudden Council saying, hey, what about us here? And looking real good. I know that they did play earlier, Council and Horseshoe Bend a couple weeks ago, and Horseshoe Bend won that game. But that was in Horseshoe Bend. This one will be in Council tomorrow night. So you never know. They're on a roll right now. They're the Lady Lumberjacks are. So watch out for them. Could be a great game if they're able to beat Horseshoe Bend. Look out. We might have a new number 1 team in the state if they're able to come away with a win there.
That is very true. That's a good point, Logan, for sure. Well, yeah, you talk about
1 and 2 in the same week. You're gonna get it.
Right, for sure. Okay, so you mentioned it. We always wrap up the show with Logan's 3 stars, kind of like in college football, how you give out a helmet decal to a player that stood out. So, okay, you've already given away one of your stars. What are the other 2?
Yeah, so we're gonna go Melba football. After the big win, I think that was just a big statement win. Overall against Cole Valley. I mean, coming from us, some people that thought that maybe it was Cole Valley turn or didn't give them a lot of credit. I mean, they proved me wrong. They proved us wrong. And so I give them a star for that big win against Cole Valley. And then I'm going to number 3. I know we gave one a couple weeks ago to Abby Robideau from Fruitland soccer. So Fruitland soccer, girls soccer, is on a tear right now. I don't think anybody's going to stop them. They are rolling through conference play right now. And just listen to these statistics. On the team, so Abby Robideau has 45 goals in 11 games. She has 12 assists. She is averaging 9 points a game. There are teams that probably have not scored 9 goals in 10 games, and she is averaging 9 point. So for anybody out there that's not too soccer literate, a point is either a goal or an assist in a game. So she is scoring or assisting 9 goals a game. So the team, in essence, is scoring at least that many, right? Or they have that many points.
Right.
So I know I already gave one to her. So she gets like half of one, and the other half goes to Faith George. She's also a player for Fruitland. But Faith, she's averaging 4.2 points a game. So, that alone would probably get it a star or an all-conference rating. But when your 4.2 is still less than 50% of who's on your team, somebody is doubling you on your team. Just phenomenal. So those 2 players for Fruitland right now, just absolutely on a roll right now. And then you look again, those are the only 2 to play all 11 games right now for Fruitland. Those 2, and Fruitland. So we'll just give it to Faith. She didn't get one last time. So Faith George from Fruitland, our 3rd star of the week.
I like it. I hope somebody can topple the dynasty that is Coeur d'Alene Charter, just because I like to see new teams get in there and have success. And maybe Fruitland's the team this year in 3A girls soccer.
And they look good. I mean, that's the thing is, and you've got players like that, you just don't know what can happen when you have somebody that can 9 points. She's going to come up with 5 goals and 4 assists in a game.
Yeah.
You got to, between her and Faith, you're going to have to double somebody, right? Theoretically, or you got to pay so much attention to those 2 that if you take your eyes off of them, then you got everybody else around. And so if they're not scoring, they're distracting. And it'll be interesting to see maybe if Fruitland can knock off Coeur d'Alene Charter or anybody out there, right?
Anybody. Yeah. For sure. All right. Well, that'll do it for this edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast, presented by D.L. Evans Bank. This is community banking. We ran a little long tonight. Sorry about that, but we had some really good conversation about the reclassification process in general. I thought it was a good conversation. So for this one time, it's all right that we ran long.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody, but you were listening anyway. So,
Right. All right. So we'll be back to break it all down again next week on the Treasure Valley Prepcast. For Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for listening on IdahoSports.com.